This video is sponsored by Hunter Engineering. Visit hunter.com for more information.
From the Aishan Broadcast Studio, it's What's Treading, brought to you by Hunter Engineering.
Hello and welcome to What's Treading. My name is David, and on today's episode, we are talking drive tires with Valentino Faraone. He is the Regional Vice President and New Product Development Manager at DoubleCoin. Let's get to the interview. Valentino, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. It's about time we give the drive tire a little bit of limelight here. I feel like fleets, a lot of times, they're really putting a ton of effort into that steer tire choice. Of course, they're concerned about the trailer tire and the drive tire too, but I don't know. In my experience, it feels like sometimes the drive tire is kind of in third place here. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, no, in terms of, the drive tires, I think, like we talked about earlier, steer tires tend to be where people put a lot of focus and energy. They use products that they're either comfortable with or products that have, a very strong reputation in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Trailer tires, really depending on the fitment, what they're looking to do, people put a lot of thought into, a proper application mix there. And then the drive tire, in a lot of cases, it seems like they just kind of slap something on to get them down the road. Drive tires tend to be a pretty expensive, acquisition. It's, mm-hmm. They're deeper tires. So just as far as like the price goes for a set of 8 drive tires, it's not cheap. So definitely hate to see people kind of, wing the decision-making process, but it happens.
Sure. And in your experience, how are fleets measuring their ROI on that drive tire purchase, and how might that be different than how they're measuring ROI on their, on the other fitments?
Sure. Yeah. No. I think I always try to tell guys to keep it simple, right? I mean, take the mileage of the vehicle when you put the tires on. If you choose to, pull the mileage at every PM service. Just to kind of have like a rough running estimate of what the tires are going to do as they, mm-hmm. Go through their life cycle. That's never a bad thing to do, but it really could be as simple as like, hey, here's the miles, when I put the tires on, here's the miles when I put the tires off, and then you can look at what your acquisition price is, and see how the tires performed, mm-hmm. against the acquisition price. That kind of gives you like a cost per mile for, that specific product. And in a perfect world, you're setting a benchmark against other products, always kind of looking for what the best performing product is for your business. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be super complicated. I mean, it's, you don't need bar graphs and pie charts and all these things. I mean, really, even a simple Excel sheet where just, a vehicle number, miles on, miles off, it can be really simplistic. But, even that limited amount of data can really help people make informed decisions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I haven't spoken to many fleets who are not nose deep buried in the data, on just about any component on their trucks. I mean, it's obviously super important. People are so concerned about the data, and for good reason, because that's what's going to drive that ROI and make them the most money at the end of the day. What kinds of data points can the dealer be sharing with their fleet customers in order to help that fleet make an informed decision when it comes to drive tires?
Sure, that's a good question. I know a lot of dealers that we do business with, they offer services where they'll come out to your business as often as you'd like, and they take, air pressure measurements, tread depth measurements. They're doing, it's like a physical, like when you go in for a physical at the doctor, they're doing a lot of preventative maintenance. If they find tires that have mismatched air pressure, they're correcting it. If they're finding tires that the overall diameters don't match, they're correcting it. So the servicing dealer definitely plays a huge role in helping fleets, maintain a really healthy tire program and lower their total cost of ownership for their tires. Obviously that service comes at a price, but what I've found is that spending a little bit of money on the preventative maintenance, goes a long way to saving a lot more down the road, and you may never really realize, those savings per se, because, they're saving you those breakdowns on the road that cost thousands of dollars. But in reality, I mean, the information's there. If you have mismatched air pressures or you have tires with different diameters, I mean, you're most likely going to have a problem at some point down the road. So, the dealers and the services they provide definitely help tremendously.
Yeah, and in some ways, I feel like that peace of mind is priceless too. Knowing that you've done that preventative maintenance, that your trucks are going to be, relatively safe out there on the road. Of course, anything can happen at any time, but whatever you can be doing up front to help prevent, those possible breakdowns. To your point, I think is obviously. It's just fantastic. I mean, it's something that fleets should be doing, should be thinking about if they're able to. When it comes to the drive tire, we're thinking about things like tread wear, casing durability, obviously two very important factors. How has DoubleCoin seen the evolution of these two factors in its products? How has it been able to enhance these factors?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at our products themselves, we tend to make a heavier tire. So our tire weighs, a few more pounds, I would say, probably than industry standard. So, we make a nice, robust product. Obviously that comes at a little bit of a higher price point, on acquisition. But what we find is that our tires perform exceptionally well in most environments, even harsh environments, because there is that additional rubber mass in there. The components, everything's just a little bit more well built throughout. Which is really beneficial for the longevity of the product. And then when you get into retreading, obviously, having that nice, robust casing, we find that our products are as retreadable as anything on the market. Mm-hmm. And that plays into the whole total cost of ownership. I mean, obviously, you're buying these assets, these tires, and you want to get the most you possibly can out of them. So, not only having, a nice, long, original life cycle, but then being able to retread those casings, or at least maybe trade those casings in for some value towards, future products is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the robustness of that tire, putting a little more weight into it and adding a little more possibly rubber or other components there. Does that play into what you were talking about with preventative maintenance? Are fleets able to maybe put off preventative maintenance a little longer than they might typically because of the robustness of that tire?
Oh no! Listen, I would never, want to see them do that. I mean, theoretically, could they? I don't know. But especially with these extreme, temperature swings and stuff, we have extreme colds, extreme heat. It really affects the air pressure of the product. So, on a pre-trip inspection, drivers really should be checking their air pressures and making those corrections. The pressure is really what, carries the load and make sure that everything works seamlessly, that nice smooth contact patch on the road. You really don't want to mess with that in any way, shape or form. So, definitely still do, all of the necessary maintenance on a daily basis to ensure the product is working optimally. I'd like to think that maybe, on these beautiful roads we have in some of these states, you catch one of these potholes, our tire would do a little bit better than most just because of how robust that it is. So in that regard, I think, is where we see like ourselves shine, just from the durability aspect of it. But maintenance, we still got to do all the time. Being from Northeast Ohio, I wouldn't know what you're talking about when it comes to beautiful roads.
I mean, in your experience, do you feel like fleets are doing enough preventative maintenance when it comes to their tires? Are fleets following those segments to make sure that they're hitting it before every trip? Or, is this something where maybe the dealer could come in and, in a way, almost automate this process for them so that it's the dealer who is, completing some of these for the fleet, taking some things off their plate?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. The bigger the fleets get, I think more in tune they are to their tire program, because they see that number at the end of their fiscal year and they're like, wow, that's a really big expense. So they tend to understand the value of preventative programs a little bit more. And then there certainly are some local fleets that they have the right mindset. They understand that, hey, I'm purchasing these things. I spent my hard-earned money on them, but I need to do everything that I can to ensure the longevity. So they do invest in those programs with the dealers. But I think it's difficult. I mean, like we talked about earlier, things are extremely expensive. Inflation, fuel prices, trucking rates, I think are still down pretty low. So I know it's a difficult environment for these guys. And I think at times, like, if you can't really notice the monetary savings right up front, it's hard to convince people that, hey, you're doing this preventative maintenance, whether you're doing it yourself or you're paying somebody to do it, it is saving you money down the line. It's hard to quantify that, but believe me, it is, because we've just seen throughout the years that, the difference between, a well-maintained tire program and one that, they really put no effort into. Their road service bills are astronomical. DOT tickets are astronomical. So the proof is out there, but it's hard at times when, people are spending so much money on other things, for them to like put their focus, on something that's hard to put a dollar amount on.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally relate to that. I understand that it's hard to, it's hard to want to put your money and your time and your effort here at the beginning when, you have routes to run, I mean, people need their goods and, you're responsible for that and it can be hard. So, getting ahead of that 8 ball, I think, can be tough.
I try to relate to these guys, as much as I possibly can. I mean, I sell tires. I work on a development team for tires, but outside of that, I'm a consumer just like they are for, products and services. And, you got to service your HVAC system and you got to service your heating system. And, is it worth a couple $100, to potentially, avert some kind of an issue down the line? I'd like to think so. But, I do it just because, of the peace of mind to know that, hey, I've done the preventative maintenance. So I any potential issue I should be able to avoid. So I understand these decisions these guys have to make because, outside of being a tire guy, we consume a lot of things on our own. So I just try to relate to them as much as possible to make sure that they, understand, the money that's being talked about. And for most people, tires are a huge expense, for their business. So, they get it. Sometimes it just takes kind of an open and honest conversation.
Sure. And no, I think that HVAC analogy is a really perfect one in this case. Just spent about $500 having it serviced, so hopefully it was worth it. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but hopefully it pays off for you.
Exactly.
Now, with a lot of the things that you mentioned, the economy being the way it is, things are expensive. Are you seeing any trends as far as drive tires specifically are concerned, where maybe fleets are maybe gearing themselves a little more toward the more value product than they are the performance product?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that you hit it right on the head. I think. If fleets don't have a program, with one of the major manufacturers, that gives them, a little bit more of an advantageous buying price, they typically tend to, gravitate downwards in terms of their tire purchasing. So, the tier 3, tier 4, during the difficult times in the economy tend to see an uptick, I think, in sales. And that's kind of where, where we are. That's our wheelhouse. I mean, we consider ourselves to be a, quality tier 3 manufacturer. So, we're certainly not the cheapest product in the market. So, what we try to convince our customer is that, hey, listen, we're a little bit more money than maybe some of the other products that you're considering, but we give them all the reasons as to, why we feel like, we're worth, that extra few bucks. But we're also not, really expensive like some of the other stuff that's out there. So we're in a good position to make that value pitch to customers. Mm-hmm. And in times like this, that tends to be really, fruitful for us.
Excellent. Well, one last thing to leave us with, if you were to give the commercial tire dealer one point of advice, above anything else right now in the middle of 2025, what's your message to them?
Wow. I probably just, stay the course with service.
Mm-hmm.
All things aside, service is the most important thing. I think that, dealers have, in their toolbox, the quality of their people, under promising and over delivering, and just really being there to support, your fleets, your owner operators that you do business with. Mm-hmm. I know that our partners, we align with really great dealers, and their level of service is really top notch. And I think it's helped them, even in tough times. It's helped them to continue to grow because, the reputation of their businesses is so great. And it really, when you talk to, let's say, an owner operator or a small fleet, the thing that's most important to them is service. Knowing that, the dealer has their back, knowing that the manufacturer has the dealer's back, should there be an issue. So, service is king in this business.
Service is king. I totally agree with that. Well, Valentino, thank you so much for your time. This has been very enlightening, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right, great stuff from Valentino there. And I think if there's one takeaway from this conversation, it would be preventative maintenance. I mean, as the tire dealer, you can be a great partner to your fleet customers by offering that preventative maintenance, making sure that their drive tire ROI is as high as it possibly can. So make sure that you are talking with your fleet customers and being that great partner to them. So thank you for watching. Take care.